All right, it's 2 past the hour, so let's get things kicked off. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the webinar Rain from Clinical Sale to Smart Packaging. I wanted all attendees to know that this call is being recorded. Please kindly submit any questions using the chat box on the control panel on your screen. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. It will be made available to Rain members and the public following the close of the presentation. On my behalf, I'd like to introduce you Donald Ray from Viantic, who will introduce the speakers.
Hi, good morning, everyone, in whatever time zone you're dialing in from. I'm Donald Ray. I manage North America for Voyantic, and I'm in Seattle, where it's a bit earlier in the morning from wherever you are. We have with us representatives from Bluesight and RadioSense, and up first will be Nick Peterson and Tyler Wilson. Nick is from Bluesight in Chicago, and Tyler Wilson is a clinical pharmacist at Sentara Norfolk General Hospital. And Nick, why don't you get us started?
Great. Thanks very much, Don, and thanks everybody for joining today. Really excited to talk to you. Let me pull up my slides here. So first, an introduction to Bluesight and KitCheck. Again, as already stated, my name's Nick and I work for Bluesight. Bluesight's a company that makes products for hospitals, mostly products for pharmacy, but products that focus either on inventory management, compliance, or kind of revenue cycle optimization. Today, we're going to be talking about one of those inventory management products, and it's the product that the company was founded on, called KitCheck. KitCheck is an RFID medication management solution. It is the largest deployment of any RFID medication management solution, and it has been for many years the market leader in the hospital space. Today, we're going to be talking about the way in which the uses of RFID inside of the hospital are changing, though. And to that point, I'm really excited that Tyler was able to join us today so that he can talk through what it looks like on the ground from the hospital's perspective. Before we go to that, though, I'm going to do kind of an overview of what are some of the problems that are happening inside of hospitals and health systems related to medication management, the problems that RAIN RFID systems have the capacity to change and improve, and then how is it that we're engineering a solution to do that. So first, what's going on inside of health systems that is causing organizations to look for a solution like this? The short version to that is there's a lot of manual processes that are happening in order to manage medications, and they are focused on some of the medications that it's the most expensive to acquire, the most expensive to prepare, and the most difficult to manage. And so a lot of that will have to do with things like expiration and recall. A lot of these drugs, they can't be given straight to a patient. They need to be compounded. They need to be drawn up and diluted. Sometimes they go into admixtures with other products. That means that you're preparing things on behalf of patients that have much shorter shelf lives than a terminally sterilized manufacturer-produced product would. And that means there's a lot of manual work going into tracking down all that stuff. Where is it? How much of it do we have? Are we following our safety procedures in handling it? How does that compare to how many patients we have on the schedule? What do we imagine our need to be? How does that compare to our inventory? And that's all in an environment where you can get whatever you want. For those of you who have some knowledge of what's been going on in healthcare the last 10 years, you're probably already familiar with what's happening in terms of stockouts and shortages of even high volume generic drugs. For those of you who don't, you might be amazed to find out that a lot of the oldest longest off patent, most frequently used drugs inside of the hospital routinely go on shortage. And it becomes unavailable in all of its forms, forcing hospitals and hospital systems to react to that. And that's just the cheap stuff. The problem goes up and down the industry and has become one of the main things that pharmacies in the modern era are dealing with is how do we just have on hand what our patients are going to need for us to effectuate care? And then the last one is as if these first two problems weren't big enough. Hey, I have all this stuff. It has special handling needs. Am I handling it in a way that is correlated with, what patients I have coming in, and is it even possible to buy more? If all of that goes fine, then you have staffing problems. And there has been a critical shortage of pharmacy technicians for years now. It got even more acute during COVID. It hasn't gotten much better since COVID. And every pharmacy that we know and work with is understaffed at all times. Uh, an ASHP research a report recently suggested that about 20% of those technician positions are turning over each year. Okay, so then all right, what do we do about that? How do you apply RFID to that? What are the outcomes of that going to be if you can use RAIN to solve this problem? I mean, the first one is going to be let's get the accuracy of your understanding of your inventory to 100% fidelity. We know what's in those refrigerators at any given time, whenever we want. Now that we know what's in them, now can we optimize that inventory? There's a lot of par levels that are being driven by, hey, we ran out once, so we should have more. If you can know what you have in real time, if you can more intelligently resupply with that knowledge, then you can take down some of your rates of expiration by reducing your par. I'll let Tyler speak to the specifics of how those changes were effectuated. And then the last one is we don't have staff to do all the things we have to do. So let's use less staff time in doing those things so that we have the opportunity to get to more of them. So, all right, fine. That's how RFID is solving that problem. Like, what does it actually look like, this RFID? It comes in a few forms. The original version of KitCheck is what you'll see on the left-hand side here, and it's an enclosure. It's a metal box that's a kind of lovely blue color. A lot of hospitals will call this, the Easy Bake Oven or something like that. We call it the scanning station, but we kind of like the nicknames too. And what it is it's an RFID enclosure. You open that up, it just looks like an empty box. You put things in it though, and an RFID reader, RFID antennas in concert with each other will interrogate the contents of that and say, hey, is this kit or tray correct? And those kit and trays will look like the picture in the middle here. So in, a surgical area, in a procedural area, you'll have these kits and trays. And this has been what RFID has been used for on unit dose medications primarily for more than a decade now, has been taking what you see in the middle here, putting it in the thing you see on the left here, and using it to reprocess that. But in the last few years, what hospitals have been telling us as a vendor is, hey, you guys have done a lot of work with these RAIN RFID systems to solve a problem that's big to me, but with the increase in the scope of the 340B program, with a focus on specialty medication dispensing, with a larger outpatient footprint relative to our inpatient footprint than ever before, I've got more expensive drugs in areas farther from the pharmacy that I have less visibility into than ever before. A higher percentage of my inventory at any given time, especially when measured in dollars, is outside of the view of my automation systems than ever before. And so is there a way to take these kind of RAIN RFID driven systems and make them work on this inventory? And this inventory is primarily in refrigerators. And so what Kit Check Anywhere is kind of like the picture on the right. You see they are trays, and those trays contain a RFID antenna array in them, and they can be placed inside of the refrigerator and turn that refrigerator into a cabinet or an enclosure where everything inside of it is being read using RFID. And so through that process, we're going to tag each one of those drugs with an RFID tag, or in the case that there's a manufacturer partner who is already doing RFID tagging, it would just work. But most of these drugs for KitCheck Anywhere are not tagged by the manufacturer, unlike legacy KitCheck, where there's better manufacturer support. Once those things are tagged, they can go into that kit. Once that kit is tagged, it can go into that scanning station. That scanning station will tell you what to fix about it. You fix it, you send it back out. Kit Check Anywhere doesn't even have the concept to fix it. It's just what is in it or not. And so it's being put inside of a refrigerator. You'll see in our cartoon images, it's a bright pink color. It's a fun thing. The feedback from our customers is that those kind of colors have meanings as it relates to different classes of pharmaceutical products. So unfortunately, in actual hospitals, the product is kind of a boring black color. I'm still bummed out about that, but our customers seem more comfortable with it. And you'll see that you can see the RFID tags actually sticking off the top of these boxes of drugs in this picture, and you can see the black kind of container that they're all in on each shelf. And those are the RFID antennas. That is the payload. That's what's being read. And so now we know what those inventory levels are. We know where we're at relative to expiration on each of those products, and when we can see when things move around, when something leaves the fridge, when something enters the fridge. And so that's what KitCheck Anywhere is really just an always on, always reading, always calculating inventory levels system for this kind of more expensive, higher dollar inventory. Um, so we place those liners inside of that fridge, we connect them to a power source, and then just like Legacy KitCheck, we tag that inventory, we put it inside of those liners, and it will give us in real time information as to what's expiring soon, what do we need to be restocking, etc. So that's the overview of what the product is and how it works. I'm going to hand it off to Tyler now just to talk through a couple of case studies of what did Sentara use it for and what were the benefits of that.
Thank you so much, Nick. Yeah, this is Tyler. I'm one of the pharmacists here at Sentara Norfolk General, located in Norfolk, Virginia. So two things. So we've kind of used this kit check, again, to optimize our inventory and kind of figure out how else we can optimize patient healthcare as well. So one, again, like Nick had mentioned earlier, is these top dollar medications. But on top of that, we have this other like niche in our hospital where we have these procedures that are very urgent and very important because they're life-saving, because they need these urgent procedures because there's something going on, say like a heart attack. So we have this fridge that has inventory in it as well. So we can look at these particular bags illustrated here on the right, so that way we can determine that we have enough in there for these patients. So before we get more into that, I'll get into like rough background of like IV room, just so we have a general understanding. So the IV room is where we make medications. Some of these medications are in vials, and we generally have to have a certain par or certain quantity to make sure we have enough for, to treat these patients. And some of these medications, again, are expensive. There are two areas in this place called the IV room, which is where we compound these medications. There is a non-hazardous medication side and then a hazardous medication side. A lot of the medications that we are using KitCheck for are these hazardous medications located currently in their fridge. Can they be used for room temperature medications? Yes, absolutely, we do that, but we currently don't do that with our chemo meds yet. So at this point, we have a lot of very expensive medications we like to keep our inventory tracked with, so we can determine whether or not they're going to expire and we don't waste these medications, and also making sure we have the medications for these patients. Because historically, and we're talking very expensive medications, some of these medications can be upwards of $100,000 a little like over tens of thousands of dollars, or even just even a few thousand. But with that, we have to go, since this other side is called a hazardous medication room. It essentially just means it's potentially harmful for staff or patients in that sense because of the type of medications they are. Because we're treating patients with cancer and other conditions that require us to use these potentially harmful medications to others as well. So with that, when we make these medications, we have to make sure we're putting on proper personal protective equipment, or PPE, and that costs money, and also puts us at risk for getting in contact with these medications. Because historically, what we'd have to do is to check and see if we have these medications. We'd have to go physically check in the fridge whether or not we have these products. And this could be multiple times a day. I've had it to where I've had 6 patients and they get multiple chemos, most of, if not half of it, at least are in the fridge. And then on top of that, our outpatient infusion center. So you can go in there upwards, maybe once or twice a day or up to 10 times a day. Each time you go in there, you have to wear protective gear, and that can cost upwards of $30 to $50 each time you go in there and waste. So with that too, when we're out and again, when we do these tagging, we're able to see this lifetime inventory tracking, and how it all starts, at least and stepping back and seeing how the process works. We get our inventory from our shipper, our shipment, and some hospitals it varies. We order through what's called McKesson. We'll get these medications, and again, we're focusing primarily, at least for this outpatient infusion slash chemo medications in this particular fridge. We'll get them in a refrigerated tote. What we'll have happen is we'll check the inventory, make sure we got everything. Then we will physically tag these medications, input all the necessary information. So drug name, lot, expiration, and then make sure they're appropriately tagged. And then we'll have them put through our pass-through into the chemo room, and then we'll put them in our fridge appropriately. So then at that point, if everything's done correctly and we tag them right, we should be able to scan our fridge, and then you'll be able to get that correct count of that product and whether or not it's going to expire, what its lot, expiration, and everything is. Now, moving forward, so I'm just trying to look at the PowerPoint and orient myself. And with that said, we have other sites in our system as well with outpatient infusion centers. So when we have this opportunity to scan and look at our inventory, we can see if something's expiring and whether or not we see another site that potentially could use that product, so we don't waste it in that sense. So theoretically, how can we also save money in that sense if we also incorporate it into other health systems, and then also try and float around this medications that are potentially expiring but also can be used to prevent waste. Now, kind of going into a different direction, and I'll go over a rough overview at the end, what all of this kind of helps with and entails. So we have our cardiac OR. I've mentioned before that this is an area where these drugs aren't super costly. Again, there have been a lot of cost savings just just in the early phases that we've noticed because of inventory management and optimizing it with KitCheck. Because we can see, again, the counts and adjust to that. And what we can do is trend these medications too, because we can, with scanning, when we have these scanners, we can get these reports from it as well and determine any kind of trends and kind of adjusting our inventories appropriately. These cardiac ORs, again, they are very important procedures. They require these medications now. We can't really wait. We don't want to have any patient delays because they need to treat these patients or they could potentially pass away. So with that said, we are able to up our PARs in our pharmacy, store them, and then kind of evaluate them more electronically than, again, like I said before, historically, we have to physically go check on these counts. And now for my hospital, we have to walk, it's about a 10-minute walk. You have to walk over from my pharmacy all the way to the cardiac hospital, and then you have to go in, physically count everything. And there's roughly like 8 to 9 products in there, probably upwards of almost 100 bags or vials. So you have to check all those products. And then including that time, you're talking about maybe 5 minutes. Then we have to walk all the way back to bring back what we need. And then we have to get all those products, get those numbers, and then pull those products make them all, and then send them over. As you can imagine, that can be a lot of delay. So what we do now is that we can scan these products after we've tagged them, and then we can fill it up appropriately and just walk over that one time, and then we're done and just walk back. So overall, in this sense, there's, again, cost savings because we're reducing on the amount of waste with these medications. 2, reduces big one is reducing the patient delay in treatment. So when we're looking at the chemo area, so we're reducing exposure, we're reducing cost and equipment that's being used, we're reducing the amount of waste because we can adjust our PARs. One, we can transfer inventory to float to other locations that can be used, or potentially set a range. And what's nice is with KitCheck, you can set a range for expirations as well too. So I can set it out for what I use for my hospitals. I set it out at least 9-ish months. So you can return, like when I get in medication, it's getting closer to time to expiring. I can also return it as well if I need to not and exchange it for another product before it expires. So there's a lot of nice features in this sense to kind of help hospitals save money. So with that said, KitCheck's, again, cost savings. We have reduction in patient delay, time wasting for staff. Because like my hospital is huge. It's got like almost 600, depending on how filled up the ER is or the emergency department, can have upwards of 600 patients in this hospital. And we're making all the IV medications. So this saving that 25 to 30 minutes walking, or however many times we have to go into the chemo room or our hazardous room to check the inventory in the fridge, you can save probably at least 30 minutes to an hour of just checking this inventory with this live lead by just kicking a button, and you can keep on your day and then check this report. Again, that being able to optimize your inventory and making sure your PARs are appropriate so you're not ordering too much or too little of these drugs.
That was great, Tyler. Thank you very much. So there's lots more to say about KitCheck Anywhere, and we'd be happy to discuss it with anybody who wants to dive in more. But I think now we need to hand over to our other presenters here. So thank you again, everybody, for your time today.
Dawn, I think you're on mute.
Yes, I always like chatting with myself on mute. I think I'm not the first one. Okay, I was kind of prepared to go into questions, but let's jump into RadioSense. We have RadioSense from Rome, Italy here today. We have Sara Amendola and
So hi everybody.
Go ahead, sir.
So welcome to the second part of this webinar, where we will learn how to use the RAIN technology beyond traceability and inventory management for innovative sensing application. But let me briefly introduce myself. I'm Sara Amendola. I'm CEO and co-founder of RadioSense. That is an innovative company founded in 2013 as a spin-off from the University of Tor Vergata in Rome, Italy. We are an engineering company that design and develop high-end solutions based on RAIN sensing networks that are tailored to our customer need. And today I am joined by Adina, that is a medical engineer from our research and development team. So at RadioSense, our mission is basically to transform any physical object into a digital connected entity that is capable of sensing, communicating, and generating data. We can bring connectivity and sensing where traditional IoT devices cannot reach, literally inside the object in very confined space, miniaturized space, and harsh environment. At a glance in this picture, you can see some pioneering example of real-world physical object that we have sensorized, from the miniature scale with implantable medical device, especially orthopedic prosthesis, but also pharmaceutical packaging, food packaging, tires, bearing, vehicle component, up to entire machinery inside the industrial plants. Our solution typically starts from the very first meter of the Internet of Things with battery-free, sustainable rain sensors that are designed ad hoc to be seamlessly integrated inside the object that we want to monitor. But then we cover the entire data journey, from the data generation at the physical level, so very close to the object, to the secure transmission of the data, and finally the can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
I was just connected for 1 second. And then we cover the entire data journey, from the data generation to the secure transmission up to the data analytics, where the raw data are transformed into actionable insight. We basically deliver end-to-end innovation across diverse industries, from automotive to food, manufacturing, and life science industries. But today we are going to explore how rain sensing technology can revolutionize the pharmaceutical sector. And now I let my colleague Adina deep dive into the core part of this webinar.
Okay, so thank you, Sara. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. So today I would like to take you inside one of our most advanced innovations in the pharmaceutical sector, which is the digital reinvention of drug packaging. So we have transformed pharmaceutical packaging from passive containers into smart and connected items by integrating cutting-edge battery-free rain RFID sensors, so enabling the real-time monitoring of temperature and humidity from within the product itself. This innovation addresses a critical and still unresolved challenge in the pharmaceutical industry, that is the ability to monitor key environmental parameters such as temperature and humidity directly from inside the drug packaging. These factors are crucial, as they can significantly affect the stability, efficiency, and the safety of medication. But despite their importance, capturing this data from within the sealed packaging, so in direct contact with the product, remains a major challenge. Traditional approaches rely on external and bulky sensors or predictive models, which offer only approximations. So they can't see what's really happening inside individual containers, especially in extremely small spaces like a single blister cavity, for example. And also, opening the packaging to measure would compromise the very microenvironment that we need to preserve. So what's missing is a way to monitor internal conditions continuously, accurately, and non-invasively at the item level. And that's exactly the gap our solution fills. So with embedded rain RFID sensors that turn each package into a smart and self-monitoring system. As you know, the rain RFID technology was originally developed and widely adopted for object identification and tracking. So traditional RFID tags act as smart labels attached to items, wirelessly transmitting their unique identifiers to an external reader. And this, of course, has enabled powerful applications in supply chain visibility, inventory management, and also asset tracking across countless industries. But in recent years, the RAIN RFID has evolved far beyond the simple identification. So with the integration of sensors, such as those for temperature and humidity, this technology can now deliver real-time data on the physical conditions of objects. And also its battery-free nature, combined with the ability to achieve extreme miniaturization, opens up new possibilities. So RAIN RFID tags can be designed not just to be affixed to an object, but to be embedded within it, without altering its form or function. And all of these features make the RAIN RFID the natural enabler for the item level monitoring in the pharmaceutical sector, where capturing the microenvironmental conditions from inside each individual product is both a challenge and a necessity. However, those of you that are coming from the pharmaceutical world know just how vast and complex this sector is. Packaging comes in many forms, blisters, vials, syringes, and so on, made from materials like plastic, glass, or aluminum, and ranging in size from single-dose blister cavities to large bottles containing hundreds of pills. And it's not just the packaging, there are also various formulations to consider. So we have tablets, capsules, liquids, each with its own properties and characteristics. And this creates a vast number of combinations, each presenting unique constraints. And that's why a one-size-fits-all approach simply doesn't work. So monitoring solutions must be precisely tailored to the specific packaging and the formulation of each product, which of course represents a real challenge because it requires the development of highly customized and application-specific sensors. Now, at this stage, the key question probably becomes, when does it actually make sense to monitor temperature and humidity inside the packaging? Well, the ability to capture this data at the item level is valuable starting in late-stage development. So during laboratory testing, stability studies, and packaging selection, having real-time and package-specific data helps scientists understand how the drug behaves under various conditions and how different packaging solutions perform. And as the product moves into production, packaging, and storage, this same capability becomes essential for ensuring quality and also compliance. So in this context, our solution becomes an enabling technology designed to strengthen and accelerate the development process by providing in-depth and real-time data throughout the product development journey. So to address the need for the item level monitoring across these key development phases, we started several years ago designing a dedicated family of sensors, each tailored to different types of pharmaceutical packaging. So the first solution I'm showing you is a sensor roughly the size of a standard pill, specifically engineered to be placed inside vials or bottles, regardless of whether they are made of plastic or glass, and even in very compact formats. So it combines an ultra-miniaturized antenna for communication, a next-generation RFID chip from the French company Adina that integrates both temperature and humidity sensors, and the protective casing. So this very small device can accurately measure internal temperature and humidity, so inside the container, and wirelessly transmit the data in real time to an external RFID reader. So building on that first solution, we further pushed the limits of miniaturization, and we developed a circular sensor, roughly 1 centimeter in diameter, comparable in size to a typical tablet. So this version is specifically designed to be integrated directly into a single cavity of a blister pack. So it is compatible with the most common aluminum PVC blisters, as well as with alternative full plastic-based materials that reflect today's growing push toward eco-friendly and sustainable packaging. And one of the known weaknesses of blister packs is the risk of micro leaks and moisture ingress. So embedding a sensor inside each cavity allows for the first time a direct and continuous monitoring of the microenvironment at the dose level. So of course, this opens up a new standard of precision in assessing the packaging performance and significantly enhances early phase studies for selecting selecting the most protective and appropriate packaging solutions. Both of the devices I've shown you integrate the same RFID chip, whose sensing performance has been extensively validated in controlled laboratory environments. So the results that you can see here demonstrate that the sensors reliably meet the performance requirements that are defined by pharmaceutical industry standards. And in particular, humidity has proven to have an accuracy within 5% across the full temperature range, so ensuring consistent data even in variable conditions. The next step was to validate the use of these sensors in a real industrial packaging line to ensure full compliance with pharmaceutical manufacturing processes. So what you see here in these pictures is the packaging phase of standard plastic bottles, where a sensor was manually inserted into each container at the beginning of the line. This insertion process that was currently supervised and performed by operators is straightforward and can be easily automated in future implementations. Also in the image at the top right, you can see an operator using a handheld reader to wirelessly retrieve sensor data from a finished package, so immediately after it exits the production line. And this demonstrates how quality control and also micro-environmental monitoring can be seamlessly integrated into standard packaging operations without disrupting existing workflows. Here you can see instead the testing phase on a blister packaging line. In this case, as well, the sensors were manually inserted into individual blister cavities during the early packaging steps. And at the end of the line, the sensor data was read directly from within the sealed package using a handheld reader very similar to a smartphone. And this device proved very intuitive and easy to use, even for the operators with no prior experience in the RFID technology. So this test not only validated the technical feasibility of integrating the sensors into blister packaging, but also confirmed the usability of the system in real-world production environments. After the integration, the sensors into the packaging, we moved on to validating their performance in a real-world application scenario, that is a stability study conducted inside a climatic chamber. So for this activity, we followed a protocol provided by a leading pharmaceutical company with whom we are actively collaborating. And what you see here is a snapshot from those tests, specifically the temperature and humidity profiles recorded by one of the sensors placed inside a single blister cavity. And this marks the first time that we've been able to capture such precise and item-level data from within the microenvironment of a sealed blister. For example, you can see how the internal humidity begins to rise and eventually exceeds the initial value when the external humidity, that is shown by the black curve, becomes extremely high. And this behavior indicates moisture ingress into the cavity, offering a level of visibility that's never been possible before with conventional methods. However, these stability chambers, which are essentially metal-walled refrigeration units, also shown by Bluesight before, pose a particularly hostile environment for radio frequency communication because signal reflections and also interference create a significant challenge for reliable data transmission. So defining read points, meaning the number and placement of antennas, is far from straightforward in these settings. So the challenge becomes even greater when reading sensor-equipped probes which require higher activation power, and also when dealing with large numbers of densely packed packages on the shelves. So to address this, we developed a dedicated methodology that allows us to optimize the entire reading architecture for such environments. This includes determining the ideal type, number, and positioning of antennas, as well as the appropriate transmission power to ensure a robust and reliable communication. And the strength of this methodology lies in its scalability. Indeed, it can be applied to design optimal reading architectures for climatic chambers of various sizes and shapes, ensuring robust and real-time monitoring and a continuous communication, even in the most challenging radio frequency environments. So now with this overview of the sensor solutions that we have developed, I'll now pass it over to Sara, who will walk you into the specific use cases these solutions are helping to unlock within the pharmaceutical development.
So thanks, Adina. Now, following this technical overview, I will now walk you through the real application scenarios where rain sensors promise to bring a breakthrough in the pharmaceutical industry. We all know that pharma is a highly regulated and conservative industry where introducing new technology is never trivial. There are strict GMP rules, regular inspection, very detailed and time-consuming approval processes that often can slow down the innovation. However, over the last few years, we have been working closely with leading pharma companies who are not only testing our solution as early adopters, but also helped defining the requirements and use cases. So together, we have outlined several high-value applications across the entire product life cycle, from the development, packaging to manufacturing and distribution. And those scenarios can offer real operational impact without necessarily requiring a full regulatory submission from the scratch of the innovation. I want to point out that at this stage, we are mostly focusing on industrial use cases. That means that we are not yet addressing scenarios that involve home use or patient interaction with our sensors. Let's begin with the first scenario that refer to the late stage development of new product, new drug, which is the final and often most resource intensive phase before regulatory submission and market approval. At this stage, pharmaceutical companies usually run large-scale studies to confirm the product safety, efficacy, and the shelf life. And one of the key activities in this phase is running stability testing. These tests involve exposing drugs product to elevated temperature and humidity to simulate long-term storage. Tests are usually performed inside stability chambers, which are essentially controlled environment fridges. Scientifically, it is well known that the degradation kinetics of many pharmaceutical compounds increase exponentially with the temperature, following the Arrhenius equation. But what it is often overlooked is the role of the relative humidity, which is also a major accelerator of the degradation, particularly for moisture-sensitive APAs. So, well, traditional methods either relied on indirect evaluation of humidity or are based on destructive tests. By embedding a rain sensor directly inside the container, we could monitor the actual environment that is experienced by the product over the full test cycles. And this enables evident key benefit. We can continuously in situ monitoring temperature and humidity without opening the container or destroying the sample. And starting from the direct measure of the humidity, we can derive relevant parameters such as the water activity, that is a key predictor of microbial growth and chemical degradation, replacing time-consuming and labor-intensive laboratory method, like the well-known Carl Fisher titration. And overall, this can support faster and data-informed decision during the development of a new formulation and the quality assurance. Now, let's look at the second scenario. We are still in the late stage development of new drugs, and it refers to the selection of the right primary packaging. Materials of primary package are the ones that have direct contact with the product, so they can absorb, release, or interact with the drugs that are inside. So it is clear that they plays a major role in protecting the product, especially from humidity that can affect the shelf life and the bioavailability of the product itself. So regulatory guidelines recommend selecting packaging as early as possible during the development of drugs, but based on real data. So again, there is a challenge because traditional tests like the water vapor transmission rate or the weight gain offer only delayed or indirect results. So again, rain sensors that are inserted directly inside a package can monitor how different packaging materials perform in real condition. So this helps the pharma teams to directly compare various packaging options to choose the best material earlier, even during the development stage, and also speed up the design and the validation of new packaging material, especially for the new sustainable packaging that are supposed to be aluminum-free and made of polymer monomaterial. So in short, we can make with this approach the packaging measurable directly from the inside. Now we can shift to the manufacturing phase, specifically to the process analytical technology. PAT is a framework that is promoted by the regulatory agencies aimed at monitoring and controlling the quality of the product in real time during the manufacturing process. So not just testing the product quality afterward at the end of the production. Currently, most of the PAT systems are fixed to the equipment or based on ambient sensing, so they don't tell you what the drug itself is going through. And this is especially crucial for some steps of the production, like sealing, freezing, defrosting, or during the line cleaning, the changeover, where something might go wrong, but you wouldn't catch it unless you are measuring at the unit level. So again, this is where an in-package sensor could add something new, because sensors inside the containers can act as distributed sentinels of the production, bringing the unique perspective of the product, enabling a granular control of critical transition, especially after cleaning or changeover, and finally providing decision-grade data for internal monitoring and risk-based assessment. So now let's move to the final scenario. We can see what happened after the production, where the products travel through the supply chain by trucks, ship, through distribution hubs, and finally reach the healthcare facilities. What is a common scenario? A temperature logger that is inserted inside a box could report a temperature spike during the shipment. And this event can trigger a quality complaint. But what actually happened inside the product? That's often a mystery. The drug itself, in fact, is typically protected by multiple layers of packaging, including isothermal insulation, bubble wrap, outer cartons, which means that the conditions that are reported by loggers outside the primary container most of the time don't reflect the true exposure of the drugs. So to make things more complex, stability studies are often run under standardized laboratory conditions and usually do not represent the wide variety of packaging configuration or the real transport routes. So in many cases, the true thermal impact on the product at item level is simply unknown. So this is where rain sensor offer a new approach. We don't send sensors in every shipment. Instead, we can use them into the lab to recreate the exact condition of a reported anomalous event. Same packaging, same configuration, but this time we can place the sensor inside the primary container and measure what happened. This allows pharma teams to reproduce the field event in a controlled way, understand whether the drugs truly left the safe zone, and overall support the cold chain validation, the complaint resolution, and even improve the packaging design with real product level data. So it's like building a physical twin in the lab of the pharmaceutical product journey. So now, finally, I want to wrap up this webinar with a few key messages from what we have seen so far. So first, rain technology goes beyond traceability. Our sensors can turn pharmaceutical packages from silent container into data generator, giving us package level intelligence that are available throughout the product life cycle, helping accelerating the formulation design of new product, improving the stability modeling, and increasing the regulatory confidence. In terms of technology readiness, the technology is mature. We already have battery-free probes suitable for bottles, vial, blister. We are currently working on a new generation of semi-active logger suitable for enclosures and cap. And everything is designed to work with the standard rain read point, already widely adopted for the inventory management system, as presented former from Bluesight. So we imagine future mass integration quite straightforward. This solution is currently available as a minimum viable product, already tested and validated. There are pilot programs underway with major pharmaceutical companies, including Pfizer. But beyond pilot, we are seeing a wider market opportunity. In fact, thanks to sensors, rain adoption could expand across a new pharma segment where high-value sensing is both justified and strategic, such as analytical lab, CDMO, or advanced packaging innovators. Looking ahead, we are actively expanding the sensing capability, not just temperature and humidity, but in the future we will have other chemical parameter and nitrogen, oxygen, nitrosamine, light exposure, and even more. So thanks for the attention. I conclude my part. I think now we have time for the Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Sara. So we have two wonderful applications for rain in healthcare, specifically the pharma world. RadioSense is involved in the package design and the monitoring of package design to see how effective it is to protect our pharmaceutical products. And we have Bluesight on site, on hospital sites, to demonstrate how we can track these materials and use them much more cost effectively. So anybody out there, please add some questions. We have about 5 minutes left. Nick, you want to answer the first one?
Sure. So there's both. The KitCheck, the original KitCheck product has a mobile version that is battery powered, basically sort of a KitCheck mobile pharmacy in a cart. KitCheck Anywhere by its nature is always in a refrigerator, so you are always close to the wall in a fixed location. So that's just a PoE solution. You plug it into Ethernet, and from there the antennas are daisy chained into the refrigerator.
Okay. Thanks for that, Nick. On on your presentation, actually, when Tyler was speaking, I remember the effectiveness chart. You had like 100% benefit gain from some drugs all the way down to insulin, which had a 15% effectiveness. Can you explain what that meant? I think I missed it.
So Tyler, do you want to speak to why different drugs had varied rates of improvement in their expiration rates after deploying RFID?
Yeah, so roughly go over it. So some of these medications, they have what are called beyond use states or expiration dates once they change according to storage. So some of these medications, which Bluesight can help with as well, and these beyond use states for compounds, they're limited to a certain amount of days. So 4 days a maximum at room temperature, 10 days in the fridge. And then when you get to something like insulin, you get these vials. They can be stored in the fridge up to whatever the manufacturer date is, which can be a year, 2 years, depending on when you get them into the hospital. But once you go into this, say, vial, this multi-dose insulin vial, it's only good for 28 days. So at that point, they can be tagged and checked, but they may expire at that point because there's some patients, the insulin requirements vary. So you may see in those instances with vials, which I don't specifically use, but I can imagine is when you have those situations and you tag them and you get them checked, you may not use them all, and then they'll ultimately expire, which is outside of any hospital's control. So you'll see Bluesight won't eliminate all of those things, those possibilities, but it will help you maintain and be able to track it easier to avoid having those medications sitting there expired. But again, inventory has been optimized a lot more in the setting of like the cardiac OR because we have this fridge that has these KitCheck sensors in them, so we can see when or how long these medications are good for. So you may see, and like in our context, that we don't really waste anything.
So it's it's very drug application dependent. So thanks for clarifying that.
Did you have anything else to add, Nick, to that?
No, that was a great answer.
Yeah, it was. So the next question has to do with the cost of putting tags on these items. I want to say it's exciting to see in the industry now millions of pharmaceutical products being tagged in manufacturing. We still have a long ways to go to get to billions, but it's a great start, and I'm sure Bluesight gets excited when they see pre-tagged drugs. Can somebody comment on the cost of item level tagging as the question states?
So it's a tough question to answer because there's different things you're going to deploy. There's going to be a capital expense for equipment that you're going to use to capture EPCs and send them to the places they need to go. And then there's going to be the ongoing operational expense of the labels. The labels have gotten much more efficiently priced in recent years. There are definitely manufacturers who are getting quoted prices that are, hovering around the 10-cent an item level. Those are at really high volume. So, and there are special features in a lot of pharmaceutical labels that those labels don't have. So your mileage may vary, and don't consider that a template for how your particular product is going to get priced. But prices have come down a lot as volumes have gone, from the kind of hundreds of thousands into the maybe 10-ish million range.
So just a comment from myself, I was in a hospital pharmacy, and I know that 2 or 3 times a week, a team of 2 or 3 people came in to handle newly received drugs. And I think they worked for about a half a day. So somebody could calculate, the man hours, the person hours, and the repetitivity of that. So let's see what we have next. what is required in the reader to grab the radio sense sensor data? Any comments on, is there anything special, or can we use standard readers to pull this data?
So in our solution, we are using standard reader, rain reader, since all the commands that are needed to retrieve the data from the IC are basically standard read command according to the APC Gen 2 protocol. What we have developed is a software that could be either installed on the reader or on an external computer that performs some routine to pre-process locally the data to increase the accuracy, especially for the ambient measurement, of course, and then it is able to stream the data also to external existing platform according to the mostly adopted standard protocol used for communication in industrial settings. But from a hardware perspective, in principle, any rain reader could address this job.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And Nick has answered his last question in the Q&A. And we're over time, so thank you very much to our presenters. And do we have anything else from the Rain Group, Elizabeth?
No, I don't believe so. Just wanted to say thank you to all our presenters as well. And you can follow up with them if you have any additional questions. The webinar will be on the website in one day, but just want to say thank you all again.
Okay, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Everybody,
Bye-bye.
bye.